A very warm welcome to the 23rd episode of the podcast of the World Wind Energy Association, the World of Wind Power. My name is Stefan Gsänger, and it's my pleasure to welcome our guest today, with whom I will talk about an important Southern European Mediterranean market, one of the biggest markets in this region, and that is Turkey. It's my pleasure to welcome Ibrahim Erden from the Turkish Wind Energy Association. Hello, Ibrahim.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for hosting me and Turkish Wind Energy Association.
Yeah, so Ibrahim, if we start, we've met recently also in person. I know that you are also internationally active, but your main role is you are the president of the Turkish Wind Energy Association. So maybe you can briefly explain how you came into that. Why do you work for wind energy? What's your role? And what's the role of the Turkish Wind Energy Association?
Again, thank you for hosting me and also the association that I represent. As you mentioned, I mean, I'm chairing Turkish Wind Energy Association for about 3 years and have been quite active both in Turkish energy ecosystem and also in the international arena, in the international wind energy ecosystem. And what I have been doing here is, in fact, we are the umbrella organization in Turkey representing the whole value chain in wind energy, which includes investors, turbine manufacturers, other industrial manufacturers which are working for wind, EPC companies, service and maintenance companies, consultants, financial institutions, and also academia and professionals from the industry. Turkish Wind Energy Association was founded in 1992, so it's a 34-year-old organization. I believe it's like, unlike most other Western peers, we are quite old in that sense. We are young in the energy arena. The technology is young, but we have been very well established in the industry, in the energy ecosystem in Turkey. And what we have been doing, of course, other than representing all these stakeholders in the industry, our role is threefold in Turkey. First, we try to act as a bridge between the sector and the public authorities. Try to do as much as we can to improve permitting, grid integration studies, the market design, like the commercial issues, technical advancements, etc. And second, we work to improve the investment environment. I mean, our role is to promote Turkish wind. Turkey is a country surrounded on 3 sides by 3 different seas: Black Sea, Marmara, like Aegean Sea, and also Mediterranean Sea. So it's a peninsula, both in the European side and also in the Anatolian side, and have a vast amount of wind. And the wind potential is huge. So we try to improve the wind investment environment as much as we can within our powers. Then third, we focus very strongly, especially in the past 4 or 5 years, on the industrial development, the supply chain, in which Turkey is very strong at, in supplying global OEMs, wind turbine OEMs, and major component manufacturers, and supplies various components with a very strong track record. And in that sense, of course, improve work skills and employment in Turkey. And by doing so, we are trying to represent our stakeholders and ecosystem both in Turkey and also internationally, not only. So we are not only bound and stuck in Turkey. And where we are in Turkey's energy transformation, in fact, is I need to mention there about Turkish energy strategy. Very briefly, Turkish energy strategy is established on three main pillars. One is supply security. The other one is energy independence. And the third one is reaching net zero by 2053, which is, a very ambitious target. And we need to reach to these targets with a competitive energy price, where we can only achieve with renewables. And wind has a very strong role to reach these targets, we believe. And all our efforts is to bring us and the country to these targets. I unfortunately don't hear you, with my apologies.
Okay, so that's really impressive. So your organization has a really long history I think the next year will be 35 years.
Yeah.
My previous guest was the Chinese Wind Energy Association. They have 10 years more, actually, but I think you probably belong to the oldest associations, which is still existing. We heard, by the way, there was already, even decades earlier, a world organization where we used to try to find out a bit more. That's impressive. So I assume at that time there was more kind of finding out, maybe research, etc. Now, you have a big wind potential. I think that is very obvious nowadays. I visited Turkey various times, and I can just confirm that I've always enjoyed also the nice weather, wind and sun. But what is the wind market? How does it look like today, or the energy market in general? So when we come to the numbers, what's the installed capacity?
Briefly, I can give you some numbers about where we are in terms of the energy ecosystem, installed capacities, and where wind is, to emphasize how strong wind is and how stronger it can become. In Turkey, we currently have, by the end of 2025, we currently have 122, 123 gigawatts of total installed capacity, for all, including all technologies. And in that, we have around 33 gigawatts of hydro and 25-ish, slightly above 25 gigawatts of solar, and close to 16 gigawatts of wind power. The remainder is more or less the rest of the conventionals, geothermal, including geothermal. But considering all these, like 33 gigawatts, 25 and 16, we have more than 73, 72 gigawatts only renewables, coming from renewables, which generates around more than 40% of Turkish electricity needs. So as of last year, Turkey generated and consumed around 360, 370 terawatt hours of electricity, and more than 40% came from renewables. And particularly for wind, it is around 11.5% of the total electricity generation in Turkey. So it has reached to a very strong level. But when we look also into the potential numbers, Turkey itself has, based on our numbers, more than 120 gigawatts of wind potential, which can be economically utilized onshore only, and including offshore, we can reach up to 300 gigawatts with current state technology based on 7 megawatt turbines.
Well, that's impressive. I'm sure that, like, if you just calculate technically, come to even bigger numbers. But what is very obvious is that the wind potential isn't more than enough for your country. And now, when look at the development, now you said Turkey has a share of, or has an installed capacity of around 16 gigawatt. When did this start on the larger scale? Did you also have, by the way, maybe in Ottoman time, was there already some predecessors, traditional ways of?
Yeah, it is. It has been always use of, like, various use of wind, old windmills, Ottomans earlier and late periods, especially in the western parts. When you tour around Western Turkey, near Bodrum, Ayvalık, Çanakkale, all those areas have old windmills which were used for various purposes, for like pumping water or for food preparations, like flour preparations, etc. So it is a historical. It has historical meaning, but when the modern wind investments, let's say, has started, is its late 90s. In 1999, the first turbine was erected in Turkey. Of course, it has a symbolic meaning. It was I mean, installed to power one of the prime hotels back then on the west coast Turkey. But when it started, is I mean early 2000s, with few different or late 90s again, 99 and early 2000s, with few different power plants, again in the western Turkey. One in Izmir near Çeşme, the other one is in Bozcaada, in Çanakkale, and the others followed. But until 2010, we reached around 1.3 gigawatts. I started the business in wind in late 2006. Back then, we had around 500 to 600 megawatts. So it doubled until 2010. But the real impact, the real development started after 2010. And by year 2025, as of end of last year, we have reached 16 gigawatts of mechanical installed capacity and 15.5 electrical installed capacity. Let me put it that way, which means we have increased our installed capacity by 12 times larger fleet development. So it is a huge development since then. What it brought and what was the reason first? In 2005, Turkish government has passed a law to support renewable energy development in Turkey through the parliament, which is our renewable law, where we are defining the support schemes for renewables, not only for wind, but also solar, geothermal, hydro, etc. And by early 2010, there was a change in the law, which increased the support items, support actions to renewables. And afterwards, together with the grid development and new investments in the grid, and also in parallel, the local and international investors have given a lot of interest to invest for renewables. And after hydro investments, wind investments started from that year on. And until 2020, we had the first big boom. And it continued since after 2020 until last year. So we currently have more than 25 gigawatts of portfolio, which was granted on top of what we currently operate in Turkish fleet, Turkish power generation fleet. So there are a lot of gigawatts ahead of us to invest and hopefully to operate to power Turkish ecosystem.
But the dynamic is really impressive. I mean, now again, we are gathering international statistics, and we see that Turkey is always moving up on this, with the position just taken over Italy, which is, I think, now Turkey, of course, by population has become bigger, but has maybe still a bigger economy in the same region. And then Australia also, I think now it seems that Turkey just took over Australia. That's really a very impressive success story. Who are the main players in the Turkish market? I mean, let's first talk about the investor side. So who invests in the wind farms? And maybe then you can also refer to, because you mentioned that initially already, there's also manufacturing in Turkey. So there's a lot of value creation happening in Turkey.
Yeah. I mean, Last year, as you mentioned, last year, Turkish annual installed capacity addition was um, reached almost 2 gigawatts. It's like 1.93 gigawatts. And the year before it was 1.3 gigawatts. And with that number in 2024, we were number 3 in Europe in new onshore investments. And most probably with this last year's figures, we will at least be at that point, if not above. But who is doing this and who is supporting this? Of course, there are significant number of different players, stakeholders in the industry. First, we have, project developers, local project developers, and some international project developers, which are active in Turkish market, and small to large scale investors. We have international players, very active. German E.ON has a JV in Turkey. TotalEnergies has a JV in Turkey. MBW from Germany and some other European companies have established JVs in the past, or they sometimes choose to invest by themselves. But it is most of the time in the form of a JV where they are cooperating with local conglomerates or investment groups. So project developers, such IPPs, investment companies, and we have more or less all Western OEMs active since the beginning in Turkey. We don't need to name them all, but they all have at least 2 gigawatt each, if not beyond. And the leading one, for example, currently has close to 4 gigawatts. And what we also see in the past 2 years is also Eastern OEMs from India and mainly, of course, from China. They also come to Turkey and try to help the investors by creating, of course, a competitive ecosystem and sell their turbines. So they're selling their turbines, servicing and operating them here. But not only that, so Turkey is not only a market, but also a supply chain ecosystem. We are supplying towers, blades, generators, various types of motors from within the turbine, and very like tower internals, and lots of different other components. Turkish exports, like pure wind turbine related exports, have reached around 2.2 billion euros in the past. Yeah. So we are just renewing the numbers. Hopefully, early this year, we are also going to publish our new industrial inventory report. Hopefully, we will see further advancements in those numbers. But these are huge numbers, significant numbers. And on top of these, of course, there are like numbers of EPC companies, local ISPs, independent service providers, or subcontractors to Western or Eastern turbine OEMs in terms of service and maintenance. Then the engineering companies, we have a very strong wind engineering ecosystem here, where our companies are serving Eastern and Western customers, and a lot in the region. So they are all quite active and a huge ecosystem in Turkey. Based on our numbers, we currently have around 25,000 people working directly or indirectly for wind in Turkey. So,
regarding the position of Turkey, I can tell you that according to the numbers, we have preliminary now the statistics. It looks like Turkey is not just moving up maybe 2 positions, but in terms of the new installations, and you provided this information to us, it will be the second largest market in Europe, and maybe number 6 worldwide, and that is very impressive. This is the.
We always say that what you achieved is not enough. So you need to go beyond.
We are talking about it's about 2 gigawatt of last year market volume, and then Germany had is the biggest European, is around 4.5 gigawatt. Compared to China, it had 120 gigawatt. Of course, all countries are really small. You compare that, but
them and the rest, right?
but I mean, what your story is telling us, of course, is again underlining that where you have the markets, then the supply chain will also develop. So you have a strong home market, but what you just told us is that there is a strong export market as well. So when you look at that, which one would you see is the more important one for Turkey? It's just for a brief answer.
I mean, we don't need to differentiate, to be honest. Both Turkish market and also the export markets are bringing huge opportunities. We see Turkish market to grow beyond 4 gigawatts. Our target is 5 gigawatt per year.
Okay.
As I mentioned about the numbers, we have more than 23, 24 gigawatts of pipeline already granted to the developers and investors. So those will come alive in the coming 10 years. And there are also other mechanisms where Ministry of Energy and our regulator are granting and continues to grant new capacities. So those will add up to about 3.5, 4, and above gigawatts per year. And when we look at the regional and global expansion and wind investments, we see also our industrialists and also international OEMs will be benefiting because industry cannot only feed itself, the country itself. It has to feed the other geographies, and hopefully we will be able to benefit from both.
Now, we talked a lot about the success story, but I'm sure there are also some problems. So there must be some issues that you are facing, and that's why you told me you travel regularly to Ankara, probably to talk to your government. What do you see are the main challenges for the Turkish wind sector?
I mean, there are various, of course, problems and risks and some threats for the development of the industry, which we are trying to overcome. I mean, starting from the imminent and short-term ones towards the long-term ones, we try to address them one by one. Main issue is definitely as it is more or less similar in all other countries which are focusing on renewables, is the grid. Grid investments, grid connection availabilities, and new investments are main barriers which we need to overcome to expand wind more than what we are envisaging now and what we are targeting now. So but in parallel with the renewable plan of the Ministry of Energy, they have a grid expansion plan, not only on AC level, but also with establishing a DC infrastructure on DC level. So this is one of the issues as one of the critical bottlenecks for the development of Turkish renewables. And then it is the permitting issue. Permitting timelines, the predictability, etc. There, luckily, we have had significant advancements in the past 1.5, 2 years with our full support and with the initiative driven by the ministry and the minister, Alparslan Bayraktar, and also with the regulator, EMRA, and its chair. Turkey has completed a so-called super permitting law, which targeted to fasten the permitting process, not eliminating any permits, but putting things in the right track so that the developers can complete them in a certain amount of period, which is not going to block the development of wind. So there we have significant advancements, but there's always more to do. There's no doubt about that. And the other one is financing, definitely. Considering Turkish economical fluctuations in the past 5-6 years, which started right before the COVID and also influenced badly, unfortunately, from the pandemic, we see that our investors have some difficulty to reach competitive financing. I mean, there are financing, available in the market, international markets, but it has to be more competitive. There is an economic program being run by the Ministry of Finance of Turkey, which goes on track, but is not sufficient as of today to bring competitive financing on par with our European peers. The pricing terms and like the maturities, the prices, they are not as good as we expect and we need to strengthen wind investments. So there are things to do on that sense. Then,
Now, in this context, now I know, for example, from countries like Pakistan, also growing economy, of course, that has its own challenges, but that direct delivery power purchase agreements, or even companies which are directly investing in wind farms. Also, they build the wind farms and they take directly the energy from the wind farm. We know this also in other European countries that is a model that is playing more and more an important role, PPAs. So that there is a direct connection between the factory and. Is this playing a role in Turkey? The direct provision of electricity?
yes, with a different name, with a different heading. We call it the license exempt model, where the industrialists, which are consuming, especially industrialists, which are consuming heavily and dependent on like electricity inputs for their manufacturing or for their production, for their activities, our government have given them the right to apply to directly invest on renewables. So they can invest for solar and wind on their own and develop their own projects where they need to buy the electricity for a certain period, for 10 years, with only a limited availability to sell it to the grid. Only some portion of the generation, which is about their consumption. So there is such an opportunity to bring industrial money, industrial balance sheets into the energy ecosystem so that they can invest. We are also forcing and also like lobbying for direct PPAs, but PPAs are more valid in Turkish market design for projects which are like starting operations. So if you are operating, then you can sign short-term, mid-term, or long-term PPAs with the consumers. But there needs to be a change in the law to give the investors a chance to be granted a license with a PPA, like signing a PPA prior to investment. So there are some efforts that we are spending since 2 years, but at least we have managed to bring industrial money and industrial balance sheets into the energy investments.
That's very interesting. And I personally believe this will be a very important part in the future. So this kind of direct, also by the way, to final consumers, maybe they start with solar first, but that is something
they did so. They started with solar first, but we also see some dedicated industrialists focus on particularly on wind and see the benefit. So if they have no rush and can spend some time for the development process, such industrialists, such manufacturers are focusing particularly on wind. Because it is not like it, although it's fluctuating, it is not interrupted as much as solar is. So they benefit a lot when having wind investments.
I believe, we had such a small boom where there was the shortage of the gas supply in like 2-3 years ago. And I'm sure that will many companies will remember that and will try to avoid this by such contracts. Now let's look into the kind of long-term future of the Turkey. This is very interesting. We could continue for a long time, but our time is of course limited. So let's look now. What's the long-term vision? You've already mentioned there's 25 gigawatt of projects in the pipeline.
Yeah.
You've mentioned that Turkey has already a very high share of renewables, actually, starting with
Mhm.
hydro. I think that's the traditional way. How do you see Turkey in the long term? Will there be? I know there is a rather new nuclear power plant, which is compared to wind, obviously not so big.
Mhm.
What's your vision, also as an association? How will the long-term future look like for Turkey?
I mean, let me start by mentioning what the government plans, because the main plan is reaching 2053 net zero, right? So
Mhm.
that's the goal, which we all we are focusing, starting from the government to the until all stakeholders in the industry. So 2053 is the net zero, and we need to secure energy, like energy supply chain, and energy security is key. Energy independence is another important pillar, and nuclear plays a role there. Turkey have tried this two, three times with different mechanisms, but at the end decided to go with an intergovernmental agreement early in 2010, 11 by signing a deal with Russia, and Russian nuclear companies investing the first nuclear. But there are plans to invest at least one or two new nuclear power plants until 2050s. So that plan is there. And the remaining is reducing coal dependence, reducing conventionals, and bringing more energy independence to Turkish energy ecosystem and energy supply. So that can only be done by reducing imported coal, by reducing imported gas and other imported like oil and fuel oil, etc.
At the end, also
Whichever is,
uranium, no? I mean,
yeah,
uranium is also
whichever
important.
that's also definitely an issue.
Mm.
So in considering all these renewables, starting from hydro, wind, solar, geothermal, have a huge role in like very important role in the future plans of Turkey, and we see these in the long-term and mid-term energy plans of ministry and of the government. So we have quite clear picture for the future about where we need to go, and coming to wind particularly, and considering a huge amount of potential which can bring us to 120 gigawatts based on today's technology. There are more to do and more to come in terms of investments in the coming years. Turkey, how are we going to achieve this? Is in fact new grid investments and new capacity allowances to the investors, and these are planned step by step, and grid like storage integrated renewables have been granted in the past 2.5 years, 3 years, to investors, for example, as the first step of this advancement. 18.5 gigawatts is currently under development, and the first investments are coming online since the end of last year, and hopefully starting from this year, we are going to see these projects coming online one by one. Then there are capacity extensions from these, existing power plants, repowering close to 2030. We are like 28, 29. We are going to start seeing new repowering units coming online. And then new capacities in terms of our different models. I mentioned about license extent projects. I didn't mention about YECA projects, for example, which have mandatory local component utilization. And last but not least, offshore. Offshore projects are under development for about 2.5, 3 years, with the support of TÜREB and a special committee which we have designed to support Ministry of Energy for the technical development, the tendering mechanisms and permitting processes, we are trying to do as much as we can, bringing international know-how and also bringing local workforce to support Ministry of Energy and its team for the proper development of offshore projects in Turkey. So there we have 5 gigawatts of target to reach by 2035. And hopefully, by considering 2053, it is going to be more. Because we know that the potential is there, even without considering floating wind offshore. We have already identified around 20 gigawatts of onshore bottom fixed potential investment zones already available. So considering all these, there are significant opportunities in the wind ecosystem in Turkey for investments and for development, both onshore and offshore. But if you look into repowering, I mentioned hybrid projects, we have our regulator granting hybrid solar for wind projects since late 2019-20. So there are a significant amount of capacity already installed in wind projects. And considering all these, I see significant amount of opportunities, which can also reflect in other parts of the ecosystem: industrial development, workforce development, engineering, then also construction and EPC tasks. There are lots of opportunities for our stakeholders which are active in these fields. So for locals and internationals who are listening our podcast and broadcast, I urge them and recommend them to look into Turkish wind potential and all the developments it can bring and all the opportunities they can benefit. I'm sure they can find something in that area that they can be active.
Very good. I think that is an excellent summary, kind of conclusion of our podcast today. I think you highlighted really the opportunities on the Turkish market without kind of ignoring that there are some challenges, but these challenges sounds as if they can be overcome because obviously, even as you explained, the government is working on it together with your association. From my side, at first, thank you and congratulations for the achievements that you've already made.
Thank you.
I wish you a lot of success for the next years and decades. Let's say the next 35 years that you ever had. I think that's the time then when the country is aiming at this climate neutrality status.
But by the way, maybe we can underline with the final sentences the opportunity this year. COP31, as you know, is in Turkey. Turkey will be the host together with Australia.
UN Climate Change Conference. Let's just
Exactly.
for those who are not familiar with the abbreviations.
With the terminology, yeah. So in November, by mid-November, for 2 weeks, we will be hosting around 200 countries and their delegations, their business and energy and climate representatives in Turkey. And hopefully we will be able to show them all these opportunities, of course, along with the risks, and we'll be able to welcome them in Turkey, in Antalya and in Istanbul.
Yes, I think that's even better conclusion. Those who are interested, maybe take this opportunity. When you are at the COP, probably there will be many people. Antalya, I visited that city personally. I know that I think different from other places, it's used to have many people, tourists. So they have plenty of hotels. I think that should be an issue, easy also to reach.
Exactly.
I look forward also to discussing with you, and that is then following this podcast, how we can make use indeed of the UN Climate Change Conference hosted by Turkey to also further the message that wind can play an important role in this event. With this, I would say thank you so much, Ibrahim. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the work that you're doing, and we wish you a lot of success for the next years to come.
Thank you personally and also your organization, World Wind Energy Association, and wish you full success.
Thank you. Thank you. And goodbye.
Bye-bye.